How's it going?
Hi. Oh, good. Sorry, I didn't. I'm
This
a
is only
Luddite.
my second time going live with someone else ever. And I should probably actually warn you that I have a Instagram timer on my phone, you know. You got one of those too? Like it cuts you off if
What does
you're
that
on
mean?
there too long. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
like I have
Like
a
for any?
5 minute limitation. And every day I just ignore it.
Oh
It
man,
pops up.
I do,
Oh,
but
that's
but my
I
phone
need that
shocks
one.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It sends like an
I
electric
need that
shock.
app. Will you send me that app
It,
after? I went live last week with Tegan of Tegan and Sarah to talk about music, and it was really
yeah,
weird. Um, because it feels like we're FaceTiming, and so I kept
yeah,
saying things that maybe I wouldn't think about 100 or in this case 54 people that I don't really know um, wanting to hear, and that was yeah. And Tegan kept redirecting like back to the we were talking about the gig coming up, and I kept being like, you
yeah.
why are we keep talking about the gig? Like let's
Because you
yeah,
forgot
yeah,
that
it's
people were
strange. And I
watching.
it made me realize that I sort of understood influencers in a way more, that if you just have the camera on and you're talking to a friend or even talking to yourself, you can think that you're talking to somebody who knows you, and you can kind of just say anything. It's wild.
Yeah, yeah. I think I was like watching. I was watching basketball
Mm-hmm.
the other day, the playoffs, and like the announcer, like I realized how like everyone is like let into the inner workings of people's lives through social media. So there's this expectation that in the public eye, like there's no
No.
scrim of show business anymore. It's all been like unveiled, and like it was really exemplified. I hadn't watched sports in a long time, and like Shaq was one of the like commentators or whatever, and he farted like live,
Are you
and they
serious?
talked about it. Yeah, they were all like laughing, and I was like, wow, it's real. And they all had their opinions. I guess sports commentators have always kind of had somewhat of an opinion, but they really had their specific subjective opinions about the games and the
Oh
players and stuff. And then he
God.
farted, and I was all bets are off, man. There's like it's just like the doors
That
have been blown
is,
wide
I don't
open.
even know what to say about that. It's really wild. It's really, really wild. What are
Yeah.
you up to today? What you been up to? You've been writing songs. I texted you the other day. We were gonna hang out, and you were writing and recording. How is it going?
Yeah. I've been good. Yeah. I have I made this I have this other, for those who don't know, I have this other like alter ego called Art Feynman, and I made a record that's gonna come out soon, but it's like really high energy kind of 7-piece dance band vibe. And now as like an antidote, I'm like writing love songs. That's like been my thing lately. Um, so yeah, I've been just trying to write like some love songs, like
I
heart
love I
centered
love the
music.
record. It's called "Be Good, the Crazy Boys," and I've been
Yeah,
listening to it. And I was wondering when you texted me the other day. I guess that was Saturday. When that you were writing just these heart-centered love songs. I was wondering if because I'm so inspired by everything you do as a friend and as a musician, and I love that you have this alter ego, and it's something that I relate to in that way too. Just having so many desires musically that span genres or feel or arrangements, and um, yeah, I was wondering if this happens to you often, where you'll have a a moment with some kind of, and I kind of know the answer, but I just want to hear you talk about it, like moment with a frequency range or arrangement or tempo, and then you get obsessed with it and then you switch and do the opposite.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I do that. I try not to do that like every 5 minutes. To be, I mean, my knee jerk is to like always be changing. I think there's something nice about some consistency over time to explore the more nuanced aspects of a certain feel, like which well, I can
Yeah.
get a little restless, you know. Um, so but yeah, I think it's natural for the pendulum to want to swing to the other side. But I also like there's a lot of artists that I love that do sort of inhabit
Right.
the same world, like Lou Reed, for instance, who's maybe my all-time guy, just sort of inhabits this one spectrum, and it works because it's like you can find like and so much nuance inward as much as you can outward, you know what I mean? So you can like just
Right.
deal with that sort of like mid-tempo first position
Yeah.
thing forever. I think you've talked about that a little bit. Like I think we talked about that recently when we were hanging about it, how you want to
Yeah.
sort of get back to this kind of like OG feel
It's, yeah,
that you had a
it's
while ago.
interesting because, well, when we made Sugar the Bruise, which for everybody here, Luke produced and wrote some of the songs with me on this record that's coming out in June. And we had no plan kind of going in, and wrote all of the songs except for one, and even partially that one was finished. The one that's coming out tomorrow, finished in studio. And yeah, it was I wanted to do something new. I was interested in dance music, sort of, in the way that somebody who's just beginning to get interested in dance music can be. And yeah, wanted to see what it would be like to not dredge up like all of my trauma and put it in a song. And even though some of that still made it there, um, but it was so freeing to just have fun and work with you. And because to comment on, like you said, it's hard to not change every 5 minutes. Like when I'm activated in the studio, that I can be that way too, where it's like, oh, let's try this thing and let's try this thing. Like I want to put in all of the little seeds I've been gathering into one thing. And but I love what we made, and there was such a freeness in the studio in that way, where, and you can hear it in the music, it's playful. Like, yeah, I'm like goofing around with you, and I can really touch those experiences when I listen. And I really love what it was. And then I remember after, because that wasn't the typically the way that I write songs. Usually I live with them for so long and I know what they mean to me, and they're so heart-centered, and I will demo them out, and I know their identity for the most part. Um Not to say that I'm not surprised when the recording is finished, but I found myself craving that heart center, like solo way of just like diving in to writing in the way that I did for Placeholder and my first record. And yeah, when I said I wanted to go back to the OG sort of feeling of writing, it's funny because I've been doing that sort of for a couple of months slowly. And I did a song, I recorded a song in that vein, and I was really bored by it. Like, and I don't know if if maybe it's a production thing, but yeah, I wanted to make something kind of boring or just chiller and mid-tempo, and sort of function similarly as Placeholder does for me in my mind and in my body when I play it. And I was really like, we gotta fuck it up somehow. It's gotta be off kilter, or it's gotta be um more engaging. And I don't know, I'm excited to see. I'll send it to you too, because I'm curious what you think. But I I'm not giving up on going back to what is easy for me, but I definitely, do you It happened. My timer went off. Yeah.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
How do you, what'd you say?
yeah, I lost you.
Yeah.
I
Well,
lost you. You
I'm curious, like, how do you integrate those parts of yourself, like Be Good the Crazy Boys, Art Feynman, with like heart center love songs and when you're writing, yeah, I'm curious, like, what those parts are doing when you're writing more heart centered songs, you know?
yeah, you know, uh, it's like a chicken or the egg thing, I think. Like, um, sometimes I wonder if you can actually uh, sort of will
Right.
yourself into those spaces. You know, I think you just were talking about it. Like, you decided you wanted to go back into a placeholder thing. You wrote something. It didn't feel right. Maybe it, like, there's a dissonance with where you're at the moment. You know, so there's always like this like there's always this like I maybe will hear, you know, some music. I think I heard, like, I was listening
Mhm.
to like George Jones or something, like some country music, and there's some ballads, and I was like, oh, want to write some ballads, you know, like as a conceptual idea, I suppose. And then the reality of it is, like, am I actually in that space right now? Like, you know, like you want to do something, but do you really want to? It's a there's so many levels to, like, how to, like, the being influenced by the world around us and wanting to grab at all these different things, and especially now when
Yeah.
media is coming and music is coming at us from all, you know. So I don't know. It's I always like there's always some sort of need to, like, center myself and see really where I'm at, and like sometimes what I feel like I'm being asked to do
Yeah.
is not
I
really
mean,
what I want to
often.
do. I, yeah,
Yeah.
like most of the time, like in some weird way. Yeah, it's like living your life true in that way is not
I,
always. Sometimes it's kind of a drag or something. Like, I've wanted to, like, make a dance record. Typically, it's like what I want to do on the outside is kind of opposite from what I'm actually like. If I set out to make, like, a dance record,
yeah.
then I'll just write a
Well,
bunch of
we
ballads.
both taught that
You
School of Song class, and this was my first lecture, was like tricking yourself and procrastinating, and
Yeah,
like there's been times when I like feel on a subconscious level that I'm supposed to be writing, and I'll make a lot of social plans, like on the surface for some reason. I'll like hit up a lot of friends and be like, "What are you doing tonight? Like, let's hang out." And then I'll start writing about like 10 minutes before I'm supposed to leave, and then cancel all my plans. And that, like,
yeah.
it's like there needs to be tension or something, and I think that that's part of the process, and or I'm starting to understand that that's part of the process where, yeah, like, if you give, I mean, everybody talks about this, and it's such a privilege, obviously, to have like months and months where you don't have to do anything. But when artists go to residency, they don't write because there's nothing to push back against. And um, yeah, definitely. And also just on the like heart centered songs. So I played a show on Saturday for this benefit for the feminist center for creative work, and I played solo, and I played some of the songs that we recorded, and I played Something Wrong, and it was the first time I ever played it solo, like at a show. And I played this other song that I wrote, um called Quiet Summer Life, and that's like the one that I was recording, and that felt down tempo, and it served the same somatic function for me. And it's interesting, and I'm curious if this ever happens to you, where like recording and writing and performing are such different things. And when I play these songs by myself and I play them slow and I sing them, like it feels amazing. And every time I go to prepare for tours, I'm always shocked at how fast the songs are. I'm like, this feels way too fast. I love to just live in like slow, like a drone and sing because it feels good. And then when I went into the studio and played it that way and recorded it, and at a show, it and people are engaged. I think they're not leaving, so it feels like it's reciprocal. But then recording, sometimes it's really hard to capture that and then share it with people because of what you were saying too, where there's so much media coming at us from all sides. And maybe I'm really wrong, and maybe I'm not giving people who listen to music enough credit, but I start to worry in the studio that people will lose engagement or lose investment because it's like boring. Um, and have you started to think about recording these songs yet, in a way that's captivating?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've I have a lot of different thoughts about that, but uh, I think for me, writing and recording typically like is best when it happens at the same time, kind of, or like very close. Like if I write something, it's best that I record it right away. And really, in that to that point, like I don't typically like these days
Right.
go
Yeah.
into a studio. I don't demo because I've found that the vibe um, is best
Mm-hmm.
at the
Mm-hmm.
at the conception of the song. Uh, so I've had to like kind of get better at recording myself, like make sure the
Yeah.
fidelity is like some decent at least. Um, but and then also I don't it there's less time that passes to sort of be worried about,
Right.
oh, is this boring, or is this kind of like capture it in the moment. But I've thought about, there is something like, when you're playing live, I've found, I mean, it can go either way. Playing live can be like, feel
Yeah.
uh, very isolating sometimes if it's not going well. Or when you're connected and you're in that sort of like, for a lack of a better term, like like a flow state or something, the audience, um, um, I'm like, wow, like that. There's a reason why a lot of times people will see someone live and then
Right.
listen to the music and be like,
Yeah.
you really need to see them live. Like the records isn't. And so I've thought, like, why don't people have like audiences in the
Smart.
studio? Like I mean, if it was like the right situation and you just had like a bunch of people,
Right.
even like 10 people, you know, and you created an environment, you recorded for them, I feel like that would make a big difference. I mean,
Right.
there's a lot of reasons why we don't do that. There's like, but time is money, and like
Right.
wrangling schedules and all this stuff, which is the thing I wanted to talk about making the record we made, which, for a lot of people who don't make records, like the process that you bringing in like these sort of half finished songs and stuff with the amount of time, which wasn't much time, to like make this like mini album was really brave and pretty amazing that
It,
we ended up coming up with what we did. And
right.
people don't do that very much anymore, because now, like, there's
Yeah.
so much pressure coming from all sides, and there's very little money, and it's just like, it's so difficult to know how to navigate, like how to have the time and the like um, the least stressful environment to make something. But I mean, it's like, but money is time, and a lot of times you're just in
I
the
get it.
studio and you're
I
just like,
know.
okay,
It was
checking off.
really also brave of Fat Possum to be like, basically, I went to the label, and this is like, I can't believe that I somehow tricked them into doing this. So if anybody's on the call from Fat Possum, thank you. But um, there, I was gonna say joke's on you, but I really like what we made, so it's win-win. But I was like, I really want to go into the studio with like less of a plan and see what that feels like. And I was sort of feeling bratty too. I was like, I deserve this, and then I was really scared. It was fucking scary, and like, and I remember you and Jeremy too. It started because I had studio time booked. I had loved making the Sub Pop to those two songs that came out on Sub Pop with you guys, and it really changed those, like the songs that we did I love, and there's like a specific character about that studio and about when the three of us come together. And I remember we were all excited about doing that again, and then I had studio time booked, and then when it came close to it, I was like, I don't have any new songs, so I have to cancel. And you and both were like, you and Jeremy both were like, just come anyway. Let's do something. Yeah, and it thankfully it happened because I remember the first 2 or 3 days that we had, and maybe we were only up there for like 10 days on the first chunk, and
Yeah.
the first 3 days, like, it was brutal. Like, nothing was happening. I was like, what are we doing? Like, was this a mistake? But then something clicked, and I don't know. I think, yeah, it wasn't really a stress-free environment, right? Like, there was a deadline, and there was then suddenly people expecting something from us, and that just made me snap into it. And like, and I don't know what kind of like voodoo production stuff you're up to, like with what you say and what you don't, but it works for me. And I remember reflecting and being like, on the first day being like, this was a mistake and it's an expensive one. And then on the third day, I was like, I'm in. Like, and there was something so special about not having a plan, not having like the songs that just we know what they need. And it's vulnerable, but I feel like that sort of is the event horizon where like you don't know what's happening, and you there is the unknown and you're still searching for it. And it's easy to get stuck in that forever, which I think people, like Frank Ocean has been making the same record, for years and years, because when you have infinite time and infinite money, it can get extensive. But yeah, I loved that we were writing and recording at the same time, and I was wondering if maybe, I don't really know how to make my next record. I'm like at this point right now where I've done a lot of different ways, and they're all good. And and I almost feel like tainted by that experience in a good way, because it was like so special, and it forced me to make these decisions, writing, in terms of writing and in terms of recording, that like I didn't have time to think about if it was going to be exciting or if it was going to be boring. And the goal was, does it feel good for the kind of for the whole session? And um yeah, I think like when you do force yourself to make those decisions, because like I've done the thing where I've like spent so much time trying to work on something, and after a certain point, like it almost gets overexposed or overly written, and something wrong was such a good testament of that. Because well, how we would do the days where, once we started, that was the first one,
That was the
yeah.
first,
And
right?
I remember thinking like, these lyrics are so stupid. Like, I'm just gonna say the most basic thing. And now when I played that song, I love the song and I don't think it's stupid. And when I played the song, I was like, this is actually really effective because it's not overly poetic. Like, and I remember, again, to reference the songwriting class, just because we had both, it was like right after we both taught them, and you had a class about just saying like the most basic thing that you were feeling. I remember the one that stuck with me was like, I'm down on my knees. And just being cliche or being direct or being literal, and that has such an effect if if you're really believing it in yourself and you're not overly writing. And that, I think, really inspired me on these batch of songs, because yeah, like I would have never written these songs in that way, because I wouldn't trust myself to stand behind them or something. But all,
Yeah, I mean, that's when those sort of like what seem to be overused cliches work, is when
yeah,
someone actually like leans into them. And the reason I think they're cliches is because they're universal truths. Like,
Yeah.
I'm down on my knees or something, you know, it's like, if someone says it and really means it, the weight of what that actually
Yeah.
means is pretty heavy. You know what I mean? And so I but it's a scary place to go into, because you know you don't want to be sort of,
Right.
you don't want to be just sentimental about these things. You want to actually, like mean what you say. So you have to there's a certain level of commitment, you know, going into that space. And you did, like, that song is like a classic. I think it's like very, like, it
Yeah.
just
Well,
cuts.
last night I earned the other night when I played, I really, because the chords are also so simple, and like it's just like 1 6 4 5, like it's like every song, like it's such a classic chord progression, and that was like what I was thinking, it was like stupid or whatever, because I always like to throw in some little curveball of harmony. And there's other songs on the record, I mean, like all the other ones have, I don't even, I'm gonna have to ask you what the harmony is for Nefertiti, especially. Those changes are so crazy. And um but when I was playing it, I was like matching it up with I Will Always Love You, like it, because it's the same chords, and those lyrics too, like, and I will always love you, like it's so emotional, and it's so basic, and the chords are basic, but it works because it's true. And yeah, like I I don't think I would have gotten to that place like without you being like affirming and being like, this is it, we're doing this. Because when you're alone, or when I'm alone, like it's so hard to trust yourself sometimes with lyrics like that, or simplicity. And I guess by saying I want to make like a boring record, or some like, you know, something that's a little bit more, I guess, vulnerable. I've strayed away from that word just because I think it's overused sometimes. But really, like that is the kind of music that I really like to listen to, and the kind of music that I like to make. And I've found it more challenging to be vulnerable, like on my own. Um, and I don't. Yeah. Do you ever struggle with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to, as I get older, I'm trying to sort of just, like, uh well, I read this quote, a while ago. Neil Young said, like, he was like, if I do
Yeah.
something and I feel embarrassed about it, I know that I'm doing something right.
I do too.
And I
That
think
all
about
the
that a
time.
lot. And, yeah, and especially, um I think I was more concerned earlier in my life about maybe being cool, or things that were maybe not, uh, kind of obscuring any kind of vulnerability, you know, which I think is, um, you know, a lot of people go through that. But yeah, now I feel like, I feel like it's like a threshold. If you step into it
Yeah.
and you half step there, it's not a good. You can't link. You have to lean fully into it. You have to walk right through. You know, you have to go right into the vulnerability, to where it starts to feel a little like very exposing and kind of embarrassing. I feel like, almost, you know. And I mean that I feel like I've
Mm.
only done that successfully a couple
Like with
times,
writing.
to be honest. You
Huh.
know. Yeah. Yeah. Just right. Just feeling like, oh, that
You
is
want to
just true.
share a
That is
song that you
true
think?
right there. Well, I actually think
I
there's one I just put out
It's
that I
so
feel that way
good.
about. Thank you. That I feel it's the simplest sentiment, um, and it just is true. And I'm not like trying to. I didn't really, try to, make it.
Yeah.
I didn't really use any metaphor, or like, wasn't trying to be poetic about it at all. I was just singing something that felt, true to me. So, and I think I did on that one. Um, but I think a lot of times I feel like I build little structures. I'm like architectural, and then whatever heartbeat is in the middle of that structure is sort of accidental. Maybe
Right.
sometimes it happens, but I'm more interested in building a structure. I guess maybe it's like as a like a
Yeah.
even I like produce myself or something, and kind of like see like what like what's the like formal sort of like housing of this song. Like, is it going to be like this
Yeah.
angular icy thing, or is, you know what I mean? And then hopefully I don't completely smother like the emotional aspect of it, you know. And I think I've done that in the past a lot, and that now I'm trying to come from the other, like the production value is the least important.
Yeah.
If I'm not conveying the emotion, then no amount of
Right.
production is gonna take care of that, you know. And just trying to keep, but I think it's good to like working with working with people. I think that's why maybe people would work with a producer, because maybe the producer would be able to like see more clearly, objectively, like, oh, you know, no,
Right.
this is like what's really, you've already established what works with this song. You don't have to do anything else. You add on to
Right.
it is just going to
It's
be
like
like
you're,
icing on the cake. It's already established, and it's just about like,
yeah.
you know, mining that, you know. But as artists, we don't
No.
see the
And I
nose on
was,
our own
yeah,
face in that
I
regard.
mean, so much, but I feel like that's what makes you a really good producer is that you are architectural too, but you also have such a strong heartbeat. And I don't mean to gas you, but there's a song also that I like if I need to cry, there's a song of yours that I listen to. Like if I'm like feeling so stony and like built the room around my heart and I need to get it open immediately, I will listen to your song Marianne. Like I always it like wrecks me. And like that is
Mm.
such a that's like I think that like when the harmony can happen between the architecture and the heart, like when the architecture is like actually just a pedestal for the heartbeat, and that's like grail to me. um, and I think that that's really challenging too. But you know, like that makes you a really good producer, and like I think that that makes sense why we would work so well together because like I'm very hard. Like I'm not good at small talk. I don't know how to like just talk about. I can talk about gear for like an hour, and then I'm like, and what is your relationship with your mother like? and um, it's all just a channel back to there, and I think that that makes sense why, yeah, what we made, and why it is effective, and and yeah, there's like wait, you just said something. I've been reading this is like corny but true. Like I've been reading Letters to a Young Poet actually for the first time. Have you ever read it?
Mm.
It's really really good, and I
Mm-mm.
think you would love it. And I want to read something from it actually that just um reminded me. Um Let me see. I just got to find it. Oh yeah. So the whole premise is Rilke. Is that how you say it? Yeah. So
Yeah.
this like young poet was obsessed with him and wrote him for advice, and then they had this correspondence that lasted for a long time, and it became this book. And the book is just the letters that Rilke wrote back to the poet. And
Mm.
yeah, I'm just gonna read a little bit from it, and I won't keep you too long. We can like wrap this up. But um, okay, nature. He says, if you trust in nature, in what is simple in nature, in the small things that hardly anyone sees, and that so suddenly become huge, immeasurable. If you have this love for what is humble, and try very simply as someone who serves to win the confidence of what seems poor, then everything will become easier for you, more coherent and somehow more reconciling. Not in your conscious mind, perhaps, which stays behind, astonished, but in your innermost awareness, awakeness, and knowledge. You are so young, so much before all beginning, and I would like to beg you, dear sir, as well as I can, to have patience with everything unresolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves as if they were locked rooms or books written in a very foreign language. Don't search for the answers, which could not be given to you now, because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything, live the questions now. Perhaps then, someday far in the future, you will gradually, without even noticing it, live your way into the answer. Perhaps you carry within yourself the possibility of creating and forming as an especially blessed and pure way of living. Train yourself for that, but take whatever comes with great trust. And as long as it comes out of your will and out of some need of your innermost self, then take it upon yourself and don't hate anything. So there's so much. It's really good, and I feel like he expresses this, like, this poet is like asking him, like, what do I do to be like you, basically. And I think Rilke, just, it hit him at a time in his life where, like, he was questioning himself too, like why am I the way I am. And there's another section, I'll just like try to find and text it to you, but he talks about like how, like, we're not ever supposed to know what makes us us, like we're not really, like, because then it becomes like, when you try to replicate what makes you as an artist you, like, it loses its charm or something, like. And sometimes I think when I was thinking like I want to make another placeholder or something, I was like, oh, that's just what I do easily. Like, that's just me. Like, I can just do that in my sleep, but like, actually, I can't. Like, and when I was writing those songs, I wasn't like, these are easy. Like, I was still feeling like it, it's like a God channel or something. And I love the idea of like, just trusting like whatever you're doing is what you're supposed to be doing, and like whether it's architecture or whether it's heart centered or whether it's both, like those, it's all part of it. And I feel like I know you're really into like Buddhism and like Zen meditation, and yeah, I feel like there is no answer, right? The questions are the answer, like the path is the goal. And I try to remind myself that a lot with writing, and be surprised by the questions and live the questions. And yeah, I
Well, you know, it's interesting though, uh, like you have a desire to go, you have a desire to go write a certain way. Your conscious mind is like, oh, I want to go
right,
back to writing placeholder. It, um, the so he mentioned in that little excerpt you
right,
wrote that your conscious mind won't understand. So you're so there's a desire, there's some desire towards something. Your conscious mind might have just been like, oh, I'm going to write, and I want to go back and write placeholder, and then maybe you try to do that and it doesn't feel right. But that doesn't mean necessarily disregard the feeling of wanting to go back. Maybe the feeling is just do what
exactly,
do like,
right,
so that is now. So like the desire, the will towards wanting to
right,
go somewhere is true and valid. Like that desire, it's like, I think we, like, sometimes our, rather than just sort of sitting with it as an actual reality and experience in its totality, and just moving forward in this blind fumbling way, because that's what life really is. Like, we just instantly try to like be like, like, uh, manufacture it into something
yeah,
that we understand, and then we fumble through. But the beautiful thing is, in through all of that, because that's a natural thing to conceptualize, like the human brain does that, and we're, oh, this is the kind of music I want to make. Through all of that fumbling and all those like sort of like weird circuitous mistakes that we make, and we end up with something true in the end. Like, the whole thing kind of comes out in the wash or something. Like, it's all it's all good somewhere, like, we have to somehow sometimes go into places that
right,
don't feel necessarily aligned with what we thought we wanted, in order to really push us into the places that we actually do need to be. I mean, um Yeah, it's like that basically
I
it's just like having trust in the darkness of our, like, you know, like our desire somewhere in there, like you do. And it, because you, it's always unprecedented, you know, there's no precedent for like your desire that they're wanting
right.
to be manifest because they haven't existed before.
You
So
couldn't,
how could
yeah,
you
you
know?
couldn't.
And
Yeah,
no,
I know. Yeah,
yeah,
trust
that's part of it.
is the name of the game always, and yeah, I think like, and it's so funny, like making this record with you, like I was afterwards, I was like, I gotta just do like folk songs, like I gotta get back to the basics, and now I'm like, no, I love this record. Like it's so, it just keeps unfolding like this. Like you think it's this, you think it's this, you think it's this, and it keeps changing. And for the last like 6 months, I've been home. I haven't toured. I haven't played that many shows. And of course, there's like dips. I'm like, what am I doing? This happens every time before I put out a record too. I'm like, what is happening? Should I go back to college? And um, maybe, but I, yeah, I'm starting now, and I think it comes with age too and experience. But like, and I need constant reminders and conversations like this to remember that it's all part of it. And I think like trusting yourself and trusting, yeah, the dark times is of the dark nights of the soul, if you're an artist, is the way through. um and even the struggles part of it, right? I remember like I talked to somebody, and I'll just say this last thing and then we can wrap it up. But I talked to somebody recently, and I had said like, you deserve to be happy, and she was like, I deserve to be happy? Like that's one emotion. It's one part of being human. Like there's joy, there's pain, there's sadness, there's grief. Like what does that even mean? And I was a little annoyed when she said it at the time. I was like, fuck off. But then like I got it. I get it. It's like that is just one part of it. And I think like if I had experienced like utter confidence about everything that I'm making all the time during every part of the process, like we wouldn't be having this conversation, because that's not prioritizing desire, right? That's like a safety thing. Um yeah. Pivoting because of a couple people asked like, what is the songwriting class? So just to wrap up, Luke and I both taught a songwriting class a couple of years ago through our friend's school, which is called School of Song. And you can actually, I think they started making classes retroactively available. Is yours available in that way too? Yeah. Yeah. You can just go take both of
Yeah.
our classes if you want. And it's incredible. And it honestly, it changed the way that I think about music, and it forced me to listen to music differently and take apart my process. And yeah, it was also scary to teach in that way, because I can only teach what I do. And then it made me question, what is it that I do? And then we made the school record together kind of because of that in a way too. But you can take them, and a lot of people have taught them that. I've always taken
Amazing, stable. I mean,
Chris
like Chris Cohen,
Lamelda,
Chris Watson,
Elle of Pale
yeah,
Hound. They're all so good and really, really
Beth, Robin
cool.
Pecknold.
And the prompts are great. And your prompts, like I still revisit your prompts, and it's even fun to revisit my own. I'm like, that's weird.
Yeah, yeah, I know, I know. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I feel like when like producing or teaching or something, it's like I don't live by my own advice. Like that's the. It's easier when you work with somebody to see. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
like I've been there. What would I tell myself if like I had the wherewithal in that moment to actually like listen to my own advice? This is what I tell myself. But then you get there yourself and you're like, it's all shit's out the window. You know, like it's
Yeah,
really good to have someone to
definitely.
bounce off of, you know.
It's coming out
When is
June
the record fully
16th.
coming out?
Yeah, and there's a
Oh,
song
it's
tomorrow. Thank you.
exciting.
We did a
It's a
good
good
job.
one.
Yeah, I've come around. I was like so
Yeah.
nervous to listen to it for a long time. And then Yeah, there's a song coming out tomorrow. Private Life is coming out tomorrow, and I love I love how it's
Killer.
out. So
Yeah.
thank you.
That was, yeah.
Do you have a
Yeah. Yeah.
song
It's
coming out? I
beautiful.
know that you just put out a song. Is there another one coming out?
I'm, yeah, well, yeah, I think so. I just
Great,
decided I'm just going to start releasing songs just with no fanfare. I released a song, Dare I Love, like
great song.
a few couple weeks ago, and uh, yeah, and I don't know, people like it.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh, you can just put out music. I'm not, I don't know. I mean, I have this Art Feynman record
yeah.
is like going to be a proper release and like rolling out in June, I'm hoping, or like early July. We're just gonna release a whole
Great.
bunch of
What's
singles
the
until
first
the
single?
record comes out. Just do that. I'm not
Yeah,
sure yet. I think this song, All I Can Do. Um,
cool.
I think so. I'm not totally sure, but yeah. But yeah, for like my Luke Temple stuff, I
Yeah.
just want to like be releasing singles
Well,
as
I
I,
can't wait to
yeah.
hear all these heart-centered songs you're working on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe because I'm like focusing on that. Like now I'm
I
just like making beats and stuff. So
almost
I
didn't even want to
do
talk to you about it because I don't want an animal. You can't. It's like cats, right? Like you come here, come here. Like I
I
want it.
know. Yeah,
So
totally.
yeah,
Yep.
maybe I should say like good luck with all
Yeah.
the dance music you're making.
Yeah. 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 I'll show
Well,
you dance
thank you
music.
for talking with me. I know that this is like a weird format, but it's nice to just talk with you as always. Love you. Have a great
Love you,
day.
Maggie.
Bye.